Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Beat4 Live. Welcome to Ian Woollard of the Academy Partnership. Ian, you there? Very smart looking Ian Woollard this afternoon.
I will.
Putting us all to shame.
Yes. Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Under the circumstances.
You coping well?
Yeah, it's very busy. Very busy. Odd, strange times. Lots and lots of things to think about at the moment.
What's the sort of main pressure points for you at the moment?
Well, after the furlough, it's going to be now making sure our clients don't go too mad. Money seems to be very easy to obtain at the moment, and it's an interesting time, and people are very worried. That's for sure.
What's your experience of applying for this new money tree?
So the furlough.
No, the 50,000.
Oh, well, apparently it's not here till Monday.
Oh, right.
I've just spoken to a few banking contacts of mine who are saying that essentially if you've got a pulse, you get 50 grand. And, you know, that's not good. It's worrying, very worrying. It's, especially if it comes with a declaration which exists in criminal law. So be very aware of what you're doing at the moment. Because I do think a lot of people are going to have 50 grand next week.
And not be able to spend it anywhere.
Exactly. Perhaps on marketing services like yourselves.
Or maybe we can spend it on boxer shorts. What do you think about that, Darren?
I think that is a perfect thing to spend it on. But you're gonna use them, aren't you? Let's face it, the world needs boxer shorts.
Excellent. Well, Ian, over to you. You've got a presentation for us. So if anybody's got questions, please do put them in the chat box, and we'll ask Ian the questions at the end. And it'd be good to get you on camera to ask that question. So over to you, Ian.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this is a talk about money. I originally I wrote this presentation in February with a view of providing this to a group of business owners, which was cancelled, which is quite ironic, really, because the point I was trying to get across was we're in some serious trouble in terms of money, and so quite ironic. So let's get started. I'm using the wrong keyboard. Brilliant. Let's get the right keyboard going. Come on. Right. So my name's Ian Woollard. I'm a chartered accountant. I run a firm called the Academy Partnership. We are now based in Burford. We've got a team of 4 people here, 2 trainee accountants, myself and my fellow director, who deals with all of the various compliance issues. I've put an 18 certificate on this presentation because unfortunately there is the odd expletive. I've embedded 2 videos which I managed to get from Rich Hall, Rich Planet, and Mark Cocking's website. So if any of you are aware of those 2 chaps, you might have seen these videos before. So I just thought I'd put a bit of a warning on there. And generally speaking, this I'm not trying to cause offence to anyone, but money is a funny subject, and it's important that we try and understand to what's actually happening at the moment. So let's have a look at this. So as of Q1 2018, the UK debt is 1.78 trillion. So that's 86.5% of GDP, and servicing that debt, which means paying interest to the very people who gave us that debt, i.e. the Bank of England, costs us 48 billion a year. So that's 8% of government tax income. Now, this comes from Wikipedia, and if you know anything about Wikipedia, I would probably keep that statistic in with a pinch of salt, to be honest, because we don't really know what the true figures are. But let's have a think about that. So 1.78 trillion. Now, the only people who can possibly repay that are taxpayers. So there are 31.4 million taxpayers. So if you do the quick mathematics, that's £56,000 per UK taxpayer. £40,000 in 2011. So you can see the inflationary impact over the last 7 years if you go by these figures. So unfortunately, that debt, which should not exist anyway if we're a sovereign nation, is going to have to be paid back by the taxpayer. So that's the bad news. Now, anyone who'll tell you anything about the economy, well, by anyone I mean the BBC, they tell you that there's only two choices: borrow more or repay the debt. So repaying the debt, they loosely term as austerity measures. There are not two choices because there's not two sides of a coin. There is, of course, the edge. And the edge is, well, what is wrong with the system itself? How did we get to a position where, as a sovereign people, how can we possibly be in debt? You can't, if you understand what a sovereignty is. So let's move forward. Right, how does money start? So it started as a bartering system. And the bartering system is very, very good. So I'm a chicken farmer. I've got my 3 chickens. I run off to a free market and I want some, I don't know, potatoes or whatever. Now, it's fine if I can find someone with potatoes who at that time wants chickens. But you can see the problem with that system. Often you go to the market with your chickens and nobody wants your chickens on that day. So it doesn't matter what empire we're talking about, Roman, British, Greek, they've all had the same problem and they've all solved that problem the same way, and that is to use precious metals as a medium of exchange. The reason why they do that is because some precious metals are worth more than others because of the elements of the metal itself. They're also scarce. So you've got a very good system of exchange there. They're lightweight and easy to carry. So that's the sort of basic concept of money. Now, the total value, the economy is not the money in circulation. The economy is the total value of goods and services. Money simply acts as a measure of the goods and services. That's a very important point to note. What used to happen though, so we're going back to sort of, in Britain, we're going back to about the 1500s here. But what would happen as well is the chicken farmer would go to the market and he only had 3 chickens, but he knew that he was going to have a new batch of chickens at his farm in the following week. So what he would do is he would go and sell somebody a promissory note. And that promissory note would say on it, I promise to pay the bearer on demand 9 chickens or whatever chickens he was managed to exchange for that promissory note. So now the total money in circulation should be a measure of the total goods and services plus some future goods and services. But the money in circulation was only a measure of that. Now, back in the 1500s, we didn't have equity law. We just had, not that we know it today, we just had common law. Now, in common law, you would be in a lot of trouble if you issued a promissory note to somebody knowing that you didn't have enough 9 chickens to cash in. But what would happen if you didn't? You'd be in a lot of trouble and you wouldn't be able to issue future promissory notes because your reputation would have been tarnished. Plus, people can drive past your farm. They can see how many chickens you've got. And does the number of chickens that you've got actually add up to the number of promissory notes? And effectively, that is money. So if the chicken farmer was to default on that promissory note, and this is the key point, only that promissory note would be affected. Another chicken farmer who'd issued legitimately some promissory notes for some future chickens, he had those future chickens. So it's only that other farmer whose promissory note would have to be devalued to nil. And again, that would be a breach of common law. And actually you could go to a common law court and force reparation on that person. That's the system before the current system that we know it. So I'm just going to play a little video here, which I think just brings into play.
Time now for John Clark and Brian Dorr with a few reflections on Europe's financial woes.
Your name is Roger, yes?
Roger.
Ah, that's your name.
Roger.
Good. And what do you do, Roger?
I'm a financial consultant.
Ah, financial consultant, eh?
Roger,
yeah,
yes.
Terrific. And Roger, how's business at the moment?
Not bad, thank you. Been a bit quiet lately.
How do you mean lately?
Since the war, been a bit quiet.
Fair enough. OK, Roger, your special subject tonight is the economies of the European community. Your time starts now. Best of luck.
Thank you.
How much does Greece owe, Roger?
$367 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Mostly to the other European economies.
Correct. How much does Ireland owe?
$865 billion.
Correct. And who do they owe it to?
Other European economies, mostly.
Correct. How much do Spain and Italy owe?
$1 trillion each.
Correct. Who to?
Mainly France, Britain and Germany.
Correct. And how are Germany, France and Britain going, Roger?
Well, they're struggling a bit, aren't they?
Correct. Why?
Because they've lent all these vast amounts of money to other European economies that can't possibly pay them back.
Correct. So what are they going to do?
They're going to have to bail them out.
Correct. Where are they getting the money to do that, Roger?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
How much does Portugal owe?
Hang on a minute. What was the answer to that earlier question?
Just keep answering the questions, Roger. Where is Portugal going to get the money it owes to Germany if Germany can't get back the money that it lent to Italy?
Just a minute. What was the answer to the previous question? The question was, how can broke economies lend money to other broke economies who haven't got any money because they can't pay back the money the broke economy lent to the other broke economy and shouldn't have lent it to them in the first place because the broke economy can't pay it back?
You're wasting very valuable time, Roger. How much money does Spain owe to Italy?
$41 billion, but where are they going to get it?
Correct. What does Italy owe to Spain?
$27 billion, but they haven't got it. They're broke.
Correct. How can they pay each other if neither of them has any money?
They're going to get a bailout, aren't they?
Correct. And where's the money coming from for the bailout?
That's what I'm asking you.
Correct. Why are people selling the European currency and buying the US dollar?
Because the US economy is so much stronger than the European economy.
Correct. Why is that, Roger?
Because it's owned by China.
Correct. And very well done. And after that round, you've lost $1 million.
I've lost $1 million. I thought you said well done.
Yes, well done. You've only lost $1 million. That's an extraordinary performance, Roger.
I've only lost $1 million.
Very well done.
And that's quite good, is it?
Oh, it's excellent.
Sell everything immediately. Quickly.
I think it's called Laughing as You Sink.
Okay, brilliant. So that I love that video. I mean, it basically, this is what happens if you don't have watertight bunkers on a ship. When the ship goes, the whole thing's going to go. So let's look at now what happened in the 1600s. So the goldsmiths at that time would cast the gold, and because of that, they had the best safes. So these guys, through a lot of influence from Amsterdam bankers, what they would do is they brought the coinage system and the promissory note system together. Okay, so what they would do is they would take someone's gold and they would lend it to somebody else in the form of a promissory note. So that promissory note would be multiplied 6 times. Now, at that point, this system should have been stopped from that point onwards. And this is what's caused the problem that we're in today. Because what the bankers would do is they were lending other people's gold, which causes discretionary money into the economy. Now, inflation takes away your money. So if you've got £1 in your pocket and inflation occurs, that £1 in your pocket is worth half of what it was the day before. Inflation is incredibly dangerous. Not only that, but the goldsmiths were also charging interest. So if anyone thinks that that system is fair, then obviously then you have your right to think that that's a fair system. But clearly, it's the problem with this is that goldsmiths were becoming the richest people in the economy. Now, this system is known as the fractional reserve usury banking system, and that is the system we have today. It became legal, not lawful. Let's not get the two things confused. It became legal in 1694, which was the first Bank of England. The latest one, by the way, is the Bank of England Act 2009. So let's have a look at what fractional reserve lending does. So we've got your super bank, or your central bank, in this case, the Bank of England. Now, what the Bank of England do is they'll deposit £1,111.12, apply the fractional rate to it, and permit a commercial bank to lend £2,000. Once that £10,000 is loaned, and in this case, that's loaned by Santander, the theory goes like this: that loan of 10,000 will be used to buy something, to pay for goods and services, but it will end up in another bank. So if you buy a speedboat or something, whoever's just sold you the speedboat will go and bank that £10,000. Now that's a new deposit to that bank, and they can lend £9,000 because so the fractional reserve ratio flips the other way, and you have to reserve that ratio. And as you can see, what happens very, very quickly is, and I've included Metro Bank in this because they're a so-called challenger bank, but they're not challenging anything. They are in the system. So what you end up with is you've just created £100,000 of new money off the back of an initial investment that was made 500 years ago, 400 years ago. And that's how they create new money. And the problem with that is the interest and the principal is the bank's profit, and the people's time, property and wealth is the capital on the balance sheet of the banks. Now remember, the economy and the real currency is you and I. It's got nothing to do with the banks. They just create new money. They have what's called an issuance right that's placed to them under statutory law under the 2009 Banking Act. Mayor Amschel Rothschild said in 1938, "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." So the epicenter of the UK central bank is the Bank of England. What is it? Created under Royal Charter. You can find it on Companies House yourself. What does that mean? It means it doesn't have to publish its accounts or its shareholders. Now, probably that nationalised one should have gone first. The Bank of England was supposedly nationalised in 1947. Certainly the building was, but we don't think that the shareholders are the Treasury. And actually, if you go into the Bank of England Act and you read it and you understand legalese, you can decipher this. In 1977, they issued the Bank of England Nominees Act, which actually refers to shareholders. So now we've got to think about the possibility that actually the Bank of England is owned and controlled by individual people. They were fully responsible for monetary policy in 1997. Thank you very much, Gordon Brown. They are now in complete control. Now, on their website themselves, they say that their role is essentially something called quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is where you simply buy government debt, or you issue currency as debt. The problem is that word bond, because that word bond means us. We are the bond, because we are the currency. We are the security. We are the surety for the bank. So money is issued as debt. Therefore, money is debt. Okay, let's go over the pond to the Americans. I like looking at this because actually, when you stand back and look at America, you can see the whole thing transpire. So the United States was discovered in 1492. I've put the correct word up there, conquered. Now, in 1776, it had its Independence Day. So independence from what? Well, it was independence from the King of England, and more importantly, his banking cronies. Because, of course, the Bank of England Act had been in play for nearly 100 years at that point. Now, this graphic here, this shows the US dollar to gold prices over the last 200 years. This is actually a very difficult slide to get, and I actually had to type the numbers in myself to actually create this. It took me about 3 hours one Sunday morning. Now, as you can see, in 1776, $1 would buy you $35 would buy you 1 troy ounce of gold. Okay, now you can see here throughout the recent history of America, how that's changed. So we need to look at what events have caused this. Okay, now that first little spike, well, that was the American Civil War. What actually happened there was their system of slavery was replaced with a different system of slavery, an economic system of slavery. But that essentially was what the American Civil War was about. So what happened in 1913? Well, Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act. So they got rid of the Bank of England Act in 1776. Britain did not just go away with a bloody nose. It penetrated high society. It tried the Bank of America Act once and twice, and eventually got it through as the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. Now, if I'm right and money is debt, from that point, you should have seen an inflation in the gold price. So why didn't you until 1971? Well, I've had a look into this. Well, because in 1933 to 1974, there was something called the Executive Order 6102, which actually banned Americans from owning gold. So it's quite clear on that why they kept the price of gold to $35 a troy ounce. It was because they had to buy it all back. Once they had it, in 1971, President Nixon took the US off the gold exchange, thus turning the US dollar into a fiat currency. So now you've got complete and utter control of the currency. Notice in 1963, JFK was going to issue 50 billion debt free. He wanted the he wanted the Federal Reserve gone. Unfortunately, he died 2 weeks before he was going to do that. So what is a fiat currency? Well, fiat currency means it's backed by nothing. It's the same as the UK. We came off the gold standard in 1931, I believe. America came off in 1971. And look at what else happened in 1971. Ed Heath, we got the decimalisation into the UK. And I believe that was because they needed to hide the inflation. So what's my little boxes in the way here. So we're always told that inflation was due to an excess of demand over supply, but clearly what this slide tells us is inflation is entirely man-made. So after I've depressed everyone suitably, there is an alternative, and it's called the mathematically perfected economy. Now I could explain it to you, but I thought it was much better for this clip to explain it and let some psychedelic cat explain it to you. So let's just watch this video, and I apologize now, there are a couple of swear words in here.
Hi, I'm the central bank economy.
Hi, I am the mathematically perfected economy. So, what is it that you do?
I create money out of nothing for the people and they have to pay interest on it.
You mean you receive interest on all the money you create at no cost?
Yes, but it gets better. We make those loans to government and commercial banks, and these banks can multiply that money tenfold when the people ask for a mortgage or loan.
So when the people go to a bank for a mortgage or a loan, they create the money themselves?
Yes, and their labor, production, and the property is the collateral we then have on our books.
And they have to pay interest for that?
Oh yes, and the loans we make to the government are secured by the taxes the people pay to the government straight into the profit margins of the banks.
But when you create the money, where does the interest come from to pay back the loan plus the interest?
Well, that's the good part. The interest isn't really there to begin with. They have to go out and get that so-called interest out of the existing money from some other poor sucker.
But that means that at some point, someone will default on a loan because there is not enough money in circulation to pay back the loan plus the interest?
Yes, great, isn't it? Life for them is nothing more than a sprint in a hamster wheel to keep the profit margins for the banks running.
Fuck no, they must be really stupid to allow you to create their money and pay you interest on it, and making the system terminal for them at the same time.
Hey, but guess what? That's not all. We get to keep all the principal that is paid back as well.
No fucking way.
Oh yes. So tell me, how does this mathematically perfected economy work?
Well, we also create our money ourselves, but it's free of interest.
What? No interest?
No interest, and therefore we have no inflation or deflation, or systemic manipulation of our money and properties.
So how do you deprive the people of their wealth and property?
We don't. That is not our game.
So you mean that there is nothing in it for you?
Ah yes, there's a lot in it for me, and for everybody else, as this is what a true sustainable economy should be. We don't launder the loans into our possession, we just retire loans at the rate of consumption or depreciation. We establish a one-to-one relationship to money, obligation, and the life cycle of the property, creating a mathematically perfected economy.
Shit, this means I'm out of business if the people work this out.
Absolutely, banker boy.
How can I stop this?
You cannot. Your days are numbered. We do not need banks. All banks must go, for this will be a better world to live in.
Yeah, okay, so thank you. That's the quick presentation on money. So I probably need some questions now, if anyone's got any questions.
Fantastic, really informative and engaging and fun presentation, Ian, on obviously a very topical subject.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions?
I do.
Yep.
Stacey Smart.
Hello. Hi, Ian.
How are you? Afternoon, sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Richard. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. So what's your proposed alternative to money then, Ian?
Well, it's going back to, if you go back to where we started, where we had the coin system and the effectively the coin system plus the promissory notes. It's essentially that, but the mathematically perfected economy needs debt. And that was how they managed to get the Federal Reserve in the first place, because as the economy dries up, if you think of it as oil in an engine, if it dries up, it can be devastating to the economy. So you need to pump oil in to get it going again. And that's what debt is. So debt is required, but it's the fractional reserve system that's the issue. So the mathematically perfected economy is going back to where we started pre-1694 with a system of debt, which can easily be done. And this system, by the way, every president, I think this is first touted in 1960 something, but every president that's ever seen it can't get it through, because the banks, you can't get it through the Fed in America, but it technically it works.
I thought you might be going to say something like blockchain, because that's been muted, hasn't it?
Yeah, I don't really understand too much about it, but I think the principles are correct. In that rather than have the physical coins, you have some sort of cryptocurrency, blockchain. Yeah, so I could see that would work, but the issue is it's about having some scarcity. It's about having, which blockchain does, because it's all about mathematical formulas. So some combination of that, yeah, could work. But certainly what we're currently doing is out of control. And I did that presentation in February because I thought I could see what was going to happen in the US. They need some reason to break the economy. There's too much debt. There's too much money. It's completely needs to come. It needs to be crashed. I didn't quite envisage they were going to do it this way. And I'm not making any comments on coronavirus and COVID-19. But clearly, it's going to be a reason that it's all going to come crashing down.
Hey, Tracy.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Mr. Bollocks.
Me, I find the whole thing is something like this. You just can't cover this in half an hour, can you? This is a proper kind of whole day event.
Yes.
To get your head around what you just said, because it's something which you don't really think about.
Yeah, so I started looking at it in about 6 years ago. So I've had to go around the houses. I've had to learn about Parliament, statutory legislation, common law, equity law. You have to go all of the way. I also understand how mortgages are created, and marine law. It's all based on the law of Sea of Rome. You have to go very, very deep into this to really understand. So that was a snippet of what the issue is from a tax.
So if you're saying that the other system that you suggested is the way to go, mm-hmm. That obviously needs to be driven by the powers that be that clearly don't want to go that way.
No, it needs to be driven by us, because we are the currency, we are the power. There's what 7.9 billion of us. There's probably about 20 of them. I wouldn't concern yourself too much with them. I mean, they will.
So how do we do this then? Is this? Are you saying there needs to be an uprising, a collective uprising?
It starts here, Darren.
Yeah, it does. Get in. I'm in it. I'm in. But yeah, sign me up.
So I'm in something called lawful rebellion, which again is a whole nother week's worth of understanding about what that is. But essentially, we are the currency, and we are the ones who are bonded to the current system, and the current system it will always go wrong. It always has gone wrong. The further back you look, the further forward you can see. Every single dynasty that's ever had a fiat currency have all gone wrong, because a fiat currency does not work, because it just consumes itself like a fire. The education is.
See, personally, I've just got the right brand to
let me tell you,
because the current system's bollocks.
Do you understand what that word means? What that actual word means?
nonsense.
Yes, it does. It's also synonymous with the word legal.
Okay.
That's where the word legal comes from. It comes from the word bollocks, which is spelt like that, and it means literally in Latin to cause confusion, to set in confusion. That's what bollocks means.
Total bollocks.
So to understand money, you have to go to the lot. You have to understand courts. You have to understand the lot.
Tracy?
Yeah, I just wanted, one of the things that I picked up, because it's quite complex actually what you're presenting there, and there's some links that arguably could be thought to be rather tenuous, but one of the things that made me think was about the Bank of England and who owns the Bank of England and who are the shareholders, because ultimately they are the ones at the moment that are manipulating, from a UK perspective, the economy for whatever gains. I mean, to kickstart it or for their own personal benefit, or whichever lens you want to take on that. So how far did you get in terms of understanding exactly who are the owners and the shareholders of the bank?
Personally, not that far. I did try and read the Bank of England Act, and you can, but someone else has done it. A guy called Mark Cocking's done it, and but nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows who they are, and but the Bank of England Nominees Act 1977 refers to shareholders and the desire for their anonymity. And if you go into the Bank of England 2009 Act and you actually get the accounts of the Bank of England, which aren't published formally, but you can get hold of them, they talk about HM Treasury is entitled to 50% of the ordinary profits, and then they refer to something, the bank are entitled to the other 50%. Well, what does the bank mean, and what does ordinary mean? I mean, I know as an accountant, as soon as you start using sort of spurious language like that, it's just woven in words and clever language for me.
All sounds like a John Grisham novel, doesn't it?
I find the whole thing so intriguing that. So, if you want to know more about this and delve into, is there a book? A website?
Breaking news, Darren. Ian Woolard's going to be running day 4 of Bio on Friday, the 5th of June. We got a day of Ian.
Right. So I would suggest the place you want to start is probably someone like Robert Kiyosaki. So he's Rich Dad Poor Dad. You want to go because he's very good. He talks about money as debt. There's Rich Planet. So Rich Planet's very good. He's got loads of stuff on money. If you really want to get into the real deepness of it, you've got to get onto Lawful Rebellion, and you've got to get onto the TPUC website, because you have actually got people there. A guy called Cy Spaniard, who's actually managed to get his Santander mortgage cancelled. But that's a dangerous thing to do, and what you mustn't do is collapse the economy all at once. It can't be too. These have got to be gentle steps, and it starts off with an education process about what is money and do we really need it? Where does it come from? These simple questions like a child would ask. It's almost impossible to explain to a child why we need money and why we can't just print our own money. Well, the Bank of England do. They just print money. Okay, well, if we are the Bank of England, why do they insist on charging us interest? Well, why would you do that? If I borrowed money for myself, I probably would do it interest-free, right? Because I'm just creating an extra layer of transaction that doesn't need to be there. So whichever way you think about this, it can't be that because they wouldn't charge us interest. And that's what.
But isn't it a system that you just adopt and grow up with and accept?
Yes.
Like slavery, it's a similar thing, isn't it? If you're grown up in slavery, you just accept that's what you live in, that's your life. That's all you know.
You can't escape a prison if you don't know you're in one.
For me personally, I still don't even get the cryptocurrency. That I'm like, what the
all that is that it's a very good way of exchanging transactions because it can't be hacked. So conveyancers are looking into doing this quite seriously because they're just I mean, they're completing on a mortgage and they are responsible for transferring money from one bank to another, and they are so susceptible to being hacked right at that moment that they want to use some sort of blockchain technology. Bitcoin's one of them, whereby you can safely transfer money from one party to the other. But just don't forget, the easy way to think about all of this is Parliament. It all exists for commerce. It's all about commerce, doing business at long distances. That's why we have Parliament, and that's why we need money, and we need forms of exchange, and we need clever things like promissory notes. But it's gone too far, and I think people are really starting to question now what on earth is going on. 2 months ago, I wouldn't have got anyone to listen to me, but actually now the world's gone mad, and we can all see it. I'm just sat here thinking.
We were having a conversation on the other day, and it was just like, 1 minute you're saying the government saying that the country's in all sorts of debt, and then obviously this goes on, and then everyone gets on furloughed, and all this money appears. Billions and billions of pounds have appeared, and where is it? Who's lent it to us?
So this
have we printed it? Someone lent it us. Right. If the rest of the countries are in the shit, how can they lend us it? We're having this exact. That's why I was interested in this webinar, because it just blows your head away.
Right. So this is the scary bit. So an act of Parliament becomes an act after a bill, right? What's a bill? A bill is a money-making order. So if you're going to have an act, someone's bought it. It's got a bill. There's an amount of money to it, and the Bank of England have basically bought that bill, and then it's down to Parliament to basically collect the revenue that exists within that act of Parliament. You think of a simpler example would be maybe it's law to wear a seatbelt. Okay, how much would that have been worth? Probably not too much, but then if you think it's 60 quid if you get caught without a seatbelt, it goes down to 30 quid. And there's a very real reason why it does that. It's all about contract law. So money is just the starting point of this. It's the bit that's obvious. You can see it because it's tangible, and we all have it, and we all know how much we're afraid of losing it. I think that's the key thing here. But yeah, if you're interested, then there's so much information about this and about how it all works. But be prepared to rethink everything that you sort of understand, because that's where you end up. But the truth just sets you free, doesn't it? Once you understand it, then you're in a much more powerful position.
So are you saying in the coming years, decades, we won't be having this monetary system we're in now? It is going to shift.
I hope so. I hope so. It certainly can't. I'm not quite sure how much longer the dollar's got. Because as you can see, that the price per gold, you can see how much inflation's occurred, and they have to keep crashing it, and it's all man-made. So who knows? They don't invite me to their special little meetings, unfortunately. But certainly, we are the currency. We are the bonded people. We are the ones who do all of the work in the country. It's basically our decision. But you've got to understand how you go about doing that, and it just starts with education. So if you understand this, and I understand this, and Tracy understands it, and then Richard,
I don't yet.
No,
might catch up in a couple of years' time.
Yeah,
but you will. And
I thought selling boxer shorts called bollocks was a challenge, but Jesus.
But commerce is a challenge, and what will never go away is commerce, because that's what business does. Business gets goods and services to travel long distances, and that's why we put Parliament in there in the first place, so that we could have equitable law, so that we wouldn't have to recreate contract law every single time we did a transaction. We all just rely on English law and English statute. But that very quickly has moved into the nanny state, and more worryingly, the police state.
Brilliant stuff, Ian. I mean, as you say, it's a subject that we could go on a long time on, and maybe we should be free to come on along to do a presentation at Bio. You've only got 20 minutes then, so it's probably even harder to do. But maybe you do a regular thing, Ian. It'd be good to. Obviously, you sparked a lot of interest, and it's an interesting subject.
It's intriguing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. We live in a system that we just accept. And struggle with, and like I say, it's a bit of a hamster wheel, isn't it?
I'll leave you with
just keep going.
I'll leave you with this. The con of man is very dark, but it is the con of man. So Tracy, the future is all about womankind, and unfortunately, men can't do this. We've got too much ego, so we need to be salvaged by women, which isn't a bad thing, is it?
Did you just say girl power then?
I did. I think we do girl power.
So you like the Spice Girls?
I bring them back. Put them in charge of everything. Because
he's got a Union Jack mini skirt on underneath that
they can't mess it up any more than we've managed to. So I think it's time that we stepped back and allowed some different thinking.
Different mindset.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ian. And thanks everybody for staying on beyond the 12:30 cut-off.
Sorry about that. It's
it's very interesting and good to get you back on. Good interesting conversation.
Okay.
Brilliant. We'll get you back in.
All right, no problem then. Take care.